nationwide by 3 district courts around the country. Appeals courts have declined to disturb those rulings here. So, in the meantime, we do want to discuss this even further with our friend and colleague, former federal prosecutor and legal analyst, Nima Rahmani. And Nima joins me. Nima, good to see you here, and happy Friday. I know you've been following this very closely. I think you and I have discussed this when the executive order was issued just in the first days of the Trump administration back in January here. And now the High Court will hear this, and then everyone's talking about how they might rule on this question. I guess before we get to that, why hasn't the appellate court touched this at all?
I'm surprised that it really took this long, even though the Supreme Court has fast-tracked it. This was one of the first Trump executive orders, and the one that was probably the most blatantly unconstitutional, at least according to the first judge in Washington State who considered it. And there were judges in Maryland and Massachusetts who followed suit. Because if you read the plain text of the 14th Amendment, that says that people born in the United States are citizens of the United States. Now, there is a provision that talks about the individuals being subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And that's really the language that some folks are really focused on to make this argument. And birthright citizenship isn't something that's necessary. Many countries don't have it, and there's certainly criticism that it encourages anchor babies or birth tourism. But if you look at that plain text, Andrew, and the way that it's been interpreted for well over a century, going back to 1898, the Supreme Court has said people are born here are citizens regardless of the immigration status of their parents.
So, Nima, obviously what's in place right now is pretty black and white. It's pretty cut and dry. You're born here, you're a citizen. Now, say some of the justices do interpret or will interpret this about, having selective carve-outs, for types of residents, for types of citizens here. I mean, can you imagine the justices going for that argument when you get into just kind of the logistical implications of that? No, this group of people here in the United States, they're not going to be under what we eventually rule on, but everyone else can here. That's tricky, but it's also complicated.
It is. It's possible. As far as that type of argument, really it would be a tortured reading of the 14th Amendment, a fringe legal argument, in my opinion. I say maybe Justices Thomas and Alito, maybe 2 justices that might go along or adhere to that type of argument. But even the mainstream conservative justices, Andrew, I can't imagine that they would agree that the Fourth Amendment is